My name is Ian St. John, and welcome to the fifth of the StJohnsPipeCasts. This pipecast is appearing somewhat quicker than my previous efforts, because with all of us currently locked in at home at the moment, I think anything that can entertain or even distract us for a time will be, I think, particularly welcome. One of my students said that he was coping with self-isolation by binge watching on my videos. I think he was probably pulling my leg, but I think we would agree that a binge-worthy box set requires more than simply 4 episodes. So today I'm at least adding a 5th to the collection. Now the topic of today's talk is the theory of history of the British philosopher F.H. Bradley. Bradley was a late Victorian idealist philosopher who spent his entire academic career at Oxford. His first important publication was a slender volume entitled The Presuppositions of Critical History, which appeared in 1874. And according to another idealist philosopher, R.G. Collingwood, this book was responsible for what he called a Copernican Revolution in our understanding of history. Where Copernicus had shifted the centre of the solar system from the Earth to the Sun, so, said Collingwood, Bradley had shifted our understanding of what history it was as a subject from the past to the present. History, Collingwood said, is a construct made by historians, always in a present. Now this is indeed a radical and very salutary correction to our conventional understanding of what history is. Yes, history is about the past, but it is created by historians in the present. But this argument really wasn't the central motivation for Bradley's essay. The question Bradley sought to address was a more fundamental one. Namely, was history, an academic discipline, compatible with an idealist theory of knowledge at all? Now Bradley, as I said, was an idealist. And for an idealist, all knowledge exists in consciousness. And the structure of reality, as we know it, is actively created by the conscious mind. To speak of anything as existing outside of conscious mind is simply meaningless. Reality and conscious experience are one and the same thing. Now such a theory of knowledge seems to pose an existential threat to the possibility of history as such. For if reality is present conscious experience, how can we have any knowledge of the past at all? Can past events, which by definition cannot exist within my present experience, ever be considered real? Can they ever be known to me? Are we therefore condemned to exist, if the idealists are correct, within a pure and perpetual present, with no knowledge of any past reality at all? This is the dilemma Bradley sought to address, and I have endeavoured to depict it in the following diagram. This diagram presents the idealist problem. On the right is a circle. It represents the world of my present experience, constituted by present events to which I call the states of facts. This is reality. To the left I've depicted some random past events. Even assuming they ever happened, can they be known to me? Can these past events ever be within my current experience, within my world? If they cannot, if they are forever outside the circle of my consciousness, then they can never be in my present experience, and so can never be considered real at all. Now, in his Presuppositions of Critical History, Bradley sets out to show that they can. the historical events can be facts within my world, and so be considered real. Well, how does he demonstrate this? He proceeds with 4 arguments, or 4 steps, which he proposes to settle this question. Step number 1. It is possible, says Bradley, for a past event to be real because and if it was perceived and accepted as a fact by a past consciousness. This is the first and crucial step. Any event, remember, can only be real if it exists in consciousness. Well, many past events did exist in consciousness, and so they were, at least once, real. Every past event was a present event, and insofar as it existed in someone else's conscious mind, it was real. Now this, I think you'd agree, is a result. I've depicted this in diagram 2, where past events are shown encircled now to have existed within past consciousnesses. But can these past consciousnesses exist for us at all now? Bradley says they can, and this is the second step in his argument. It is possible for us to know, Bradley says, some of the past events which existed in past consciousness because we have written testimony to this effect. Letters, diaries, books, pictures, newspapers all record past people's experiences of past events. And it is possible for us to access these past experiences through reading and studying these testimonies from the past. Now this is another powerful result. It means that in theory I can add past experience to my current present experience. It's as if I'm literally bolting on other people's minds to my own. History literally does, as we often say, broaden the mind. Diagram 3 depicts a situation and the possibility of annexing past minds to our own. But there's a problem. How do I know that these past minds, the testimony that these past minds leave for me to encounter, is in fact true? What if they made things up or just got things wrong? Clearly, if I simply bolt on testimony from the past and make it my present consciousness, I will end up inhabiting a very odd present reality indeed, full of dragons, and miracles, and flat earths, and witches, and heaven knows what else. Bradley's third step seeks to solve this problem, and it is here that he sets out the meaning for him of critical history as such. So step 3. Bradley argues that it is reasonable to incorporate the testimony of past experience into our present experience if that testified experience can pass 3 tests. So what are they? Well, the first test is this. Is the testified past experience compatible with my present experience? There is, says Bradley, only one world, my world, the world of my experience, which is reality. If we are going to add to that testimony of some past world, it must be compatible with my world. If it is not, then we will end up with 2 or 3 or more worlds simultaneously. And this is logically impossible and will disintegrate the coherence of reality, my conscious world. So for example, we cannot allow into our experience testimony that says, for example, that the sun went down in the morning, or that water flowed uphill, or that a person walked on water, or that Mount Everest is located in the state of California. To believe these things will be incompatible with my present experience, and I simply cannot accept such statements as facts about the world. As is apparent, this test rules out most biblical miracles, since they clearly contradict my present consciousness. Miracles don't happen now. Therefore, I cannot believe that they happened in the past. And any testimony saying that they did cannot be admitted into my present consciousness. Second, is the testimony of past events reliable? Was the person recording a past event actually there to witness it at all? What was their motive for recording their experience of that event? Is the text, for example, merely a piece of propaganda? We have, in short, to weigh up the character of the author, the source, and judge the reliability of what they write, if we are to allow their testimony into our present experience. The third test is coherence. Is the testimony of the past compatible with my existing state of historical knowledge about the period in question? Now, of course, no historical knowledge is ever absolutely true. And of course, new facts continually come to light which challenge or even overturn existing interpretations of the past. But still, we must be very cautious before admitting as true a piece of evidence that contradicts what we previously believed to be the case. For example, if I uncovered some long-lost diary, and in it the diary said that today I met the Duke of Wellington in Clapham High Street, on the very day to which we conventionally locate the Battle of Waterloo, then I think you'd agree with me, it would take a lot to persuade us to overturn our existing interpretation of events and include the Duke's presence in Clapham in future history books. So, according to Bradley, testimony of past experience, which is compatible with my present experience and existing historical understanding, and which derives from a source I am disposed to trust, can constitute a valid extension to present experience, to encompass a past experience which can therefore be considered real. We, as historians, can travel mentally through time and use accounts of past experience to enrich our present reality. An impressive result. A result which I've sought to illustrate in diagram 4, where we see in this case present experience, the circle of our reality, we are adding to that or annexing to it validated, testified accounts of past events, and by doing so, in a sense, extending the reach of our consciousness from present experience to past experience, thereby making history part of our current understanding. So far, in a sense, all has been plain sailing, and we have arrived at a conclusion few would wish to demur from, namely, that past events can be historical facts in our present reality. History is possible. But here, Bradley says, we hit a problem. History is not simply a pile of past events, however well authenticated. The activity of the historian is not simply to list past events. The historian seeks to construct a coherent narrative from those events, to order the events and link events and make sense of them. The essential task here, Bradley says, is to construct causal relationships between events, to show that event A led to event B, which in turn led to event C. This is what an actual historic account of the past looks like, and I've depicted this in diagram 5, where we see that past events perceived and testified as such, historians have sought to link them by proposing causal relationships between those events, thereby constructing a coherent account of the past rather than simply a set of isolated events as such. Unfortunately, at this point, Bradley is sceptical about the possibility of accurately reconstructing meaningful accounts of the past in this way. And he's sceptical for two reasons. The first is this: the historical record of past events is very incomplete. The events which have been recorded to us through past testimony is a tiny fraction of all past events. As a result, it is almost impossible to construct an actual chain of causality regarding past events. Event A may have led to event B, which led to event C, and possibly leading to event D. But we as historians only know of events A and D. We don't even know about B and C. So how can we possibly construct a coherent chain of events with regard to past occurrences? Our knowledge is chronically incomplete. That's the first problem that Bradley highlights. The second is that when constructing an account of the past, the historian inevitably moves beyond a mere catalogue of events and their relations and tries to attach meaning to events or interpret motives for happenings or assign orders of importance between events. In all of this, the role of the historian's subjective interpretation steadily increases. The historical account reflects the historian's theories, their judgments, their presuppositions, and it's very hard for us to know how far we should admit one historian's account of past events to the status of reality in our present experience, especially since, of course, as we all know, no two historians agree about their interpretation or reconstruction of the past. In which case, how do we decide which historian can be admitted as a valid extension, which historical account can be admitted as a valid historical extension of our experience, which cannot? Bradley argues, frankly, we cannot make this decision. We haven't got the basis upon which to adjudicate in this fashion. So to summarise, what Bradley sought to do in his Presuppositions of a Critical History is to show that historical knowledge is a valid form of knowledge in the context of an idealist account of reality as something limited within the bounds of possible human experience. He showed that past events could be integrated within our present experience through the medium of surviving testimonies of past experience. Historical facts can be a legitimate element within present reality. The problem is going beyond past events to construct coherent narratives of the past based on causal relationships between events. And this is very difficult indeed. So difficult indeed as to be, Bradley argues, effectively impossible. So while we can know past events as facts, we cannot ever be said to understand them in the context of historical past as a whole. Thank you.